Injecting Agri into Agritech. So I'll leave it to Nipun to talk about the session and introduce our panelists. Over to you, Nipun.
All right. We switch from looking at different business models and ways to scale non-linearly to getting into a sectorial discussion and a sector that I'm very fond of, which is agriculture. It's a very complex, multifaceted sector. And I want to have a conversation with three very interesting speakers, who I will introduce in a second. But why don't you come up, Ravi, Renuka, and Sanjay, why don't you come up, and then I'll introduce you. I was talking to Shiv Kumar of ITC, the business leader of agriculture in ITC. This was a couple of months back. And he said that ITC evaluated 1,600 startups, and then they chose to work with 6 of them. And I was quite surprised. I said, that's a fairly low ratio. Then he explained. He says that significant number of the startups were really solving, they were creating solutions looking for a market, something that Manoj as well referred to in the previous session. 50% or a large number of them were tackling a very broad problem, and therefore they couldn't be very specific about what they were trying to do, right? But a large number as well was struggling with understanding agriculture as a part of technology, right? So there were technologists trying to look at agriculture. And that obviously doesn't work. Which is why we decided to create this session on how do we inject more agri into agri-tech. And for that, I have 3, as I said, very wonderful speakers that I'm very, very privileged to host here. Let me start with Dr. Renuka Diwan, who actually grew up watching her grandmother work the farms in rural Sholapur, and that gave her the instinctive attraction towards agriculture and farming. But she is a first-generation entrepreneur of Bioprime. She's the CEO of Bioprime, who started it with 2 of her closest scientist friends after 17 years of research. And wonderful to see that she has published over a dozen international papers in plant biotechnology and in genetic engineering. We are so privileged to have you, Renuka. So she really, in my head, combines the deep science with entrepreneurship, something that Manoj also referred to in the previous session. Moving on to Sanjay, with over 35 years of experience with some of the largest companies in the world, Fortune 5, as well as working in startups. And I'll not do justice to the range of experiences that he has with being an MD or a CXO over 18, 20 years in publicly listed companies, etc., and set up probably India's biggest and most well-renowned aftermarket service company, scaling it up from 2 people to 3,000 people in about, I don't know how many years, Sanjay, but over a decade, okay. So it didn't happen just like that. All right, okay, cool. But he, since then, has now started working at the grassroots in agriculture. He's founded 2 companies, Bharat to India and Agri-Tech Enablers, doing a lot of work with FPOs, with women on education, as well as testing out a lot of agricultural processes and tools. So in my head, he's really combining the corporate skills at the global scale that you can have with the grassroots focus that he's providing it. And last but not the least, Ravi is a fellow, and I'll ask him to talk a little bit more about what that means, but he's a fellow at agriculture as a part of the Indian Administrative Fellowship, working with the Govt of Karnataka, right, and the Nudge Foundation. And he's working on technology to hasten up farmer field impact, as well as coming up with newer schemes and policies, etc. Now, he started as a software engineer, like many of us in the audience, at Hewlett-Packard, and then he moved on to a venture fund, became an equity analyst in Bank of America. He's also set up a company of a startup, which he then exited, very successful exit. And since then, he has made a series of angel investments and etc. So in my head, he's really the person who's combining finance with government, right? And so, Ravi, why don't you take 30 seconds and talk about the fellowship, and then I'll talk to Sanjay on
Sure.
other
So
issues.
it's
Go ahead.
actually very funny that I'm here speaking from a different vantage point. I used to be a product entrepreneur. So I actually built a SaaS company, which I exited in 2020 in a lateral role. So this Indian Administrative Fellowship is an attempt to create a lateral role which works, a CXO which works in the government to bring about change, be it innovation or be it others. And we launched the first one in Karnataka, the Indian Administrative Fellowship, where we work with the highest bureaucrat in the department. For example, I work with the Secretary Agriculture in Karnataka. And we are launching, for example, the Punjab cohort. So the idea is in each of the state, if we bring such CXO in the
Wonderful.
lateral role, we can
Wonderful.
bring about change. So
I think it's a wonderful experiment. So all
and thanks to Nudge for kind of sponsoring this, I guess, in some.
No, wonderful, wonderful. So what we want to try and achieve today is to look at low-hanging fruit and defining the real problems to work on. Again, going back to the point that Manoj mentioned previously. Also talking about how do we go deep and focus on complex issues that need to be solved in agriculture, which are not easy to solve. They take time, but how do we work on that as a country? And then how do we scale? Because that ultimately is the most impactful and the most difficult thing sometimes in agriculture. How do you build business models and how do you scale in that? So Sanjay, if I may start with you, to help us through the experiences that you've built up on the grassroots, what are those real issues that in your head are the low-hanging fruit?
Thanks, Nipun. So first of all, I would like, I've been working with farmers for last 4 years, really in the villages, on the ground. And last 2 years, I've been doing high-tech farming, both in the open farm as well as in polyhouses. So I'm going to really speak to you with the perspective of a farmer, hands-on, sleeve-rolled-up farmer. So first of all, let's talk about the opportunity which agriculture has. A huge opportunity because in next 30 years, when 10 billion people show up, we don't have enough food in the world. And we don't have enough food in India when we have about 1.5 billion to 1.6 billion. That's the opportunity. It's a huge opportunity for agriculture. And I'll tell you why it is a very significant opportunity for India. So the first and foremost thing is, our productivity per hectare, our yield per hectare is among the worst in the world. That's the core of the problem. So this is, to me, this is where the vision is essentially. Our productivity is among the worst in the worst in the world per hectare. So wheat, 2.4 tons per hectare, global best in class 8 tons. Rice, 4 tons, global best in class 12 tons. Vegetables, 13 tons per hectare in India, 77 tons per hectare in the US. And I can really count all the commodities. We are anywhere 3x to 27x worse off in the world. So for me, clearly our opportunity is, if I increase the yield to global best-in-class level, we will become the feeding bowl of the world in the next 30 years. And by the way, we have 2 great examples, the Operation Flood, which increased from a milk-deficient country to the world's largest producer of milk in about 30 years. So we could really replicate that over the next 30 years as far as agriculture. What is inhibiting, to really answer Nipun's question? First and the foremost is, why is this yield per hectare so low? Because the technology adoption in India of the farmers is very, very low. 5% farmers have tractors, 1.6% farmers have drip irrigation, 0.8% farmers have sprinklers, etc. So very, very minimal technology adoption. Why the technology adoption is low? And of course, one more thing, 92% farmers, look, these are the problems which you guys need to really help solve. 92% farmers have not received any skilling whatsoever in modern agriculture practices. Why this is not happening? Why technology is not being adopted? So we really need to understand the landscape. So Manoj really mentioned, and I'll give you the detail, of the 145 million farmers, 88% farmers are small farmers, owning about 1.5 acres of farm. So small farm, small produce, because they are small produce, very low income, 2,500 rupees a month is the income. Please keep these in mind, 2,500 rupees a month as the income, and therefore they can't access credit. And because they can't access credit, they can't adopt technology, so it's a vicious circle. if we sorted out on a very macro level, if we sorted out access to credit, in my opinion, number one problem, because that enables technology. If we sorted out access to credit, sorted out technology adoption by the farmers, enabled skilling for the farmers, and did crop planning, I think these are the 4 elements which can really improve the productivity, where 1 acre of farm, my own experience, it delivers 25 lakh rupees on an annual basis of revenue, and about 50% of that is net income. So where we are talking about 2,500 rupees a month as agri income of the current farmers, this can be really, scaled up to almost about 25, 30 lakh rupees from an acre of farm, using technology, so this is where I see 4 macro levels of problem.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, if I may quickly build on the problem which you shared, and on top of it, we have the climate change. On top of it, we have water table, going down and poor soil, right? And I will just add one more data element. We identified the 398 GPs in Karnataka, which were the lowest yielding, to your point, and did a quick survey, what is the reason? And we found quality seed, integrated pest management, and integrated nutrient management as the top 3 reasons why the yield were low. So again, I'm just giving still broad level. We'll get into specific, like some of the ideas you shared, but these are some of the areas where we see there are a lot of things that could be done.
I think, Ravi, integrated farm management, crop management, etc., are nice things from a top-down perspective. The farmer doesn't, frankly, neither understand, neither care beyond a point. So he's only interested in, can you reduce my risk? Can you reduce my input costs? Can you increase my income? That's all that he's bothered about. Climate change is something that you and I worry about. The farmer's trying to find the next 1,000 rupees to sustain his family.
If I may counter, so climate change appears when there is extreme weather. So can you provide me a seed, or like what maybe Renuka can talk about, solutions where if there is extreme weather, my yield doesn't go down sharply. That's what I'm trying.
Sure.
The second one was the integrated pest. So today, pest management practices to detect early on are really poorly done, is what I feel. But
I accept the fact that it is needed. I'm not saying it's not needed. I'm just saying from the bottom of the pyramid, from his perspective, he doesn't even understand all this, right? So, Renuka, I'm going to come to you. You're working in a space that can dramatically change the way we look at fertilizers, pesticides, etc. It's good for us as consumers, right? But also very good for the sector in terms of farmer income and things like that. What do you think we should be doing differently to scale this even more, number one? Number two, what should as a country we be doing to encourage more startups and entrepreneurs here to invest in some of those areas?
Thank you, first of all. Very happy to be here. Just to build on something that Ravi said on climate change, it's not that the farmers don't feel it or see it. In fact, we've seen that some of the smallest farmers in Jharkhand or Bihar really understand climate change very well, because they literally rely on one crop to provide for their entire year's income. And any change in that is very, very receptive to them. So climate change, they may not know the term, but they're very, very aware of it. And they're actually looking for solutions. And I feel that that's where the opportunity lies for them, to actually adopt technology. Coming to how can we build or have more technologies coming into the space, what we've seen is actually...
Maybe you can explain a little bit about what you're doing, because
Sure.
the audience may not know.
Sure. So at Bioprime, we are basically an ag biotech company, and we are developing different kind of molecules and microbes that very targetedly instigate processes within the plants or the pests. What this enables us to do is give farmers the very fast, very tangible, and very measurable impacts on field that he's seeking. So today, farmer actually does not have a choice whether I want to use sustainable inputs or I want to use chemicals. He doesn't have much of a window period before he sees a pest in his field and before it's going to turn very disruptive to his yield. So he has this very small window of opportunity to control that. And currently, we do not have solutions that are as effective as chemicals. So we really cannot go on blaming the farmers, saying that the residue limits are so high and the increase of insecticide and pesticide is so high. He does not have a choice. So at Bioprime, our entire thesis is, why does this have to be a choice? Why cannot we look at developing different kind of biologicals which are as effective, as targeted, as fast acting as chemicals are, and then the farmer does not have to choose. So it's good for him, it's good for the consumers, because we're eating more nutritious food, more better food, and ultimately it's good for the soil and the climate. So that is the kind of technologies that we are working on at Bioprime. And coming to the question that Nipun was raising is, how do we have more technology-based startups in agriculture, and what is really required? So I may be wrong, but from my personal observation, I see that a lot of technology startups in agriculture are not agriculturists, right? They're engineers, they're software developers. Now, coming from my personal experience, I'm a plant physiologist and a biochemist. So there are a lot of outsiders in agriculture, and we really do not, I speak from my own experience, we really do not understand agriculture as agriculture is on the field, like how Manoj was saying. So there has to be somewhere, one, of course, the first capital access that is required for deep tech startups. It's become so cool, you know, that startups are founded out of garages. Where does a biotechnology company go to start? We cannot start out of a cafe. We cannot start out of a garage. Hell, I mean, I come from a middle class family. I don't even have a garage, right? So where do we start? So that is a very important thing, and I feel that the government is, a large part of it. I'm a product entirely of a government ecosystem. I'm sitting here because Department of Biotechnology actually put in a proof of concept capital, which is unheard of in this country. A proof of concept capital means there is no product, there is a hypothesis, and the government is taking a bet on it. That kind of capital is required for deep tech startups to even start. And then we require incubation support, which makes de-risks actually, doing the technology, validating the technology, building models. So I feel, these kind of support systems are required. I don't think that the ecosystem is progressive enough, has progressed enough so much to have an end-to-end support system. In fact, in agriculture, we do not have an end-to-end support system. The regulatory is very dicey. So I feel that these are some of the aspects when come into play. We will see a lot of technology startups come into agriculture. One last point I would like to make here is, when we're talking about technology and we're talking about agriculture startup, we require a mediator like Social Alpha was for us, who helps us understand really what the problems on the field are and gives us an opportunity to test with real farmers, get that input so that we can iterate the product better. So these kind of step gaps are required at every level. So that ecosystem, once there, it may be in fragments. It need not be at one place. It may be in fragments. But that would enable a lot of technology, actually build meaningful solutions for agriculture.
I want to follow it up with saying, are they specific low-hanging fruits? And low-hanging fruits in biochemistry is very different than low-hanging fruits in other parts of agriculture. But are there specific areas that you would identify? But Bioprime was featured yesterday, or the last 2 days. There was a Kisan Mela, right? That's the right word, in Pusa Institute.
Yes,
Prime Minister had...
it was an agri startup conclave that the PM inaugurated.
Yes. Prime Minister Modi had inaugurated, and he had spoken about it. And Bioprime was one of the startups that was featured in that amongst several startups as well. So congratulations for that.
Thank you very much.
Right. But any example that you would say?
I would definitely ask people to focus on in agriculture. Farmers are just randomly putting inputs, right? There is no thought process. No business starts directly by procurement without understanding whether I actually have enough raw material or not. Agriculture is the only place where the farmer is like randomly taking fertilizers and putting into the soil. So I feel soil, health, soil management, soil profile, which is more accessible, more fast. Today, I'm not saying that they aren't, but farmers literally sending the soils and getting the data 3 months after, which is of no use. So that is one of the main features which will help farmers reduce the input
Is
cost.
that SOPs? Are you meaning SOPs? You need
No,
more SOPs?
I'm saying soil testing services.
But translating that to
Oh yeah, that would
SOPs.
require translation as well, because what does a farmer do when he understands my soil has XYZ amount of nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium? It means nothing to him. Somebody has to tell him beyond that for this crop this is enough. You need not add potassium. Your soil has enough of it. Just focus on nitrogen and phosphate or certain micronutrients. So not just the testing part, but giving it as a service part. So integration of it, and we see none. So even in the government labs, we just see that the testing services are given. I feel that this will be a massive change for farmers. It's a small step, but it's a very important step for farmers. So that's one aspect. Second aspect, I feel that is very important in the agriculture system is something to help farmers mitigate climate change, right? I mean, farmers getting notices on his, let's say he has a mobile phone and has downloaded one of the several apps that's going to tell him that a heat wave is coming, or that's going to tell him that unseasonal rains are coming. In Pune, just a couple of days ago, we saw literally 78 of rain in 2 hours. What do our farmers surrounding that land area do? He's going to know that it's coming, but what does he do?
Yeah.
So we need solutions that work for him today. So I feel this biotechnology especially and life sciences have a huge role to play here. This is a challenge that no other field can solve. This is a challenge that literally is something right up a life sciences and a biotech alley. So that would be very crucial from my standpoint. And the last thing that I would like to focus on is quality. A lot of our farmers are not able to, sell their produce and get good market quality. Forget international markets, even in domestic market. Farmers grade their produce, A grade, B grade, C grade. C grade produce is a large, B and C grade produces a large portion of the farmer's output. A grade produce fetches twice the cost of C grade produce. So for a minute, let's just forget of yield enhancement. Let's just even consider the shift of percentage. That would result in immense profitability for the farmer. So I feel this, focusing on this aspect would be crucial.
Sure.
Now, of course, I don't think it applies to cereals and pulses, but at least to horticulture, vegetables, and crops that are graded, I think it would make a lot of impact. So, in terms of wide adoption, I think this would be most crucial.
Thank you. I want to come back to the audience in a couple of minutes as well on things that you would like to ask the panel on agriculture and in areas that you're struggling with. But Sanjay, you laid out a lot of the issues at a higher level in terms of credit and then cropping and then advisories, etc. Can you translate that a little bit further into specific areas that somebody can pick up?
Sure. So I'll just pick up from where Renuka just left. So excellent question. I'll just take you through the entire farming cycle and I'll tell you my perspective. So first, broad statement, everything that has to be broken is broken in agriculture, despite us being, a massively agri country. There are 4 major elements which we need to first figure out, and I'll go step by step after that. First and foremost is the core tech. When I say core tech, the drip irrigation, the poly houses, etc. We need to first of all have this core tech affordable. It's so expensive today. I mean, all you guys are trying to develop agri-tech solutions. Do you know that despite the government providing 70% to 90% subsidy on all the technologies which I mentioned, the drip irrigation, the tractors, etc., the deployment or adoption is pathetically poor. Why is it pathetically poor? 2 reasons. One, the technology is very, very expensive. And secondly, the farmer cannot really afford to pay. So I see all these apps which are there essentially, or you pay me subscription, or all these. I am on a couple of angel network and I evaluate agtech startups. A subscription model. imagine 2,500 bucks is the income of 5 people household, and you expect him to pay 500 rupees subscription. So figure out what is a way to really drive down the cost of core technology. Figure out who pays, because the farmer can't pay. So you need to really come out with business model which are success-based business model. I find a lot of agronomy companies. Oh, I'm going to tell you how to really grow your crop, but you need to pay me 500 bucks upfront for every month, right? And then I'm not responsible for whatever I told you, whether it's going to work or not. That's really stupid. That's really exploitative. So what I'm saying, so those are real challenges. Core tech, redesign the core tech, it becomes affordable. Who pays? Figure out who pays for it. Whether there is access to credit available through MFIs or through other agencies, which can enable farmer to pay shares. Skilling, this is a real issue. I told you 92% farmers have not received skilling. Renuka just mentioned, what does he do with NPK? A farmer doesn't know how to decipher a soil test report. What does he need to do? If he sees pests in his farm, how does he avoid pests essentially? Why to really put pesticide if you can avoid pests? And then, so these are real challenges. And now let me come to real micro level. Soil testing. I heard an IIT Kanpur guys really came out with a soil testing equipment where you can really plug it in with your phone and get soil test report in the field. And I was really happy. Oh, wow, this is amazing. I'll tell you, soil testing, as Renuka mentioned, the first fundamental thing we are not able to provide to our farmers. Reports are delayed now 3 months, 6 months, essentially, after you are supposed to, and the reports are so erroneous, you won't believe. So IIT when they came out, I was very happy. Wow, these guys have come out with this solution, and they gave it to Agnext, another startup, to go and sell it. You know what they did? They missed 2 major parameters, pH and EC of the soil. Now, as a farmer, look at it. You are sitting in your offices and designing this. As a farmer, specifically as a farmer who's earning 2,500 rupees, you're saying, I'm going to give you 4 parameters, NPK, and organic content, and cation, but I'm not going to give you 2 parameters, which are very critical parameter for the soil, pH and EC, electrical conductivity. For that, if I have to go back to a government lab, the whole purpose of the solution goes for a toss. So you're designing solution, keep in mind, you're servicing 88% small and marginal farmers. The big farmers don't need your solution. They're happy selling MSP, happy selling grain, wheat and rice at MSP. It's the small and marginal farmer who need it. Then after soil come to seedlings. There are no good nurseries. That's a massive opportunity. After seeding, you come to how do you really, what irrigation you are doing. As I said, only 1.6% farmer have drip irrigation. How do you enable these farmers really have drip irrigation, which can cut down on water consumption, cut down on fertilizer consumption by 50-60%, improve yield by 50-60%. Precision fertigation. Then you come to, before that, all the mechanization equipment. Why not aggregation of mechanization equipment? It's such a great, today, farmers don't know what a rotavator is. And if they know, they don't have access to rotavator. Why not aggregation of farm mechanization equipment?
Uberization.
It's such an amazing opportunity for Agritechs. Then harvesting, 40% of harvested produce is wasted. How about really coming out with technology solutions for enabling harvest in a way that it's not wasted? Packaging, is a great requirement. And of course, then eventually market linkage. Every part of agriculture today really needs amazing solutions, which are efficient, which enable high yield, which enable cost, high efficiency. So it's every step of the way there is a room for significant technology.
As long as we can inject agri-domain knowledge along with the technology, along with digital technology
Absolutely.
and everything else.
And that's why I said agronomy services is such a, but agronomy services put your money where your mouth is. Don't expect the farmer to pay you up front, and you are off the hook essentially. So these are things essentially, whatever she talked about and whatever Manoj talked about, no farmer is going to listen to you because they want to see What is the
Yeah.
impact of this? There have been people after sales guys after sales guys who have come and sold to farmers. Buy, just now, I'll just give you an example. Black rice, have you heard of black rice? Black wheat. Lot of, NGOs told farmers to grow black rice and black wheat and black potato, and they have nowhere to go and sell. So, if you take a technology to a farmer, put money where your mouth is, essentially.
Yeah, yeah. Ravi, you've heard some of the problem descriptions, right? Now let's talk about scale, and that's where the government comes in a big way. What have you been doing? Give me a couple of examples as well, as well as specifically if you can talk about a little bit of the biochemicals and the and that aspect. What is Government of Karnataka doing in that area?
So I think when I got in, one of the goals was to see how you can Karnataka has the highest density of Agritech startups, but yet the farmer in Karnataka is still not benefiting. So one way was, okay, innovation is happening and we know people are looking at the right problems and they're solving it. How do I get it to the farmer's field, right? So some of the stuff like what Renuka said, so one of the things I've been working on is build either a sandbox or an innovation cell where I take these ideas which are mature enough, reasonably tested, or I'll give you a place where you can test with the progressive farmer group, and then if it works well, we'll try to scale. So that's one spectrum of things we have done. We have also looked at...
And these are operational. You've got the sandbox going.
Yes, and I mean, we are in the process of formalizing. Okay. Without the sandbox in place, we have taken up 2 pilots. I'll talk about them. The second thing we have been looking at is, one is a sandbox, the other is proper mature innovation that can be, taken up, and how do you kind of bring it in a model where the state is ongoing, in an ongoing manner, doing innovation, because we know that innovation takes a time to reach. So that has been the fundamental thing that we have, worked on, and that we are trying to formalize outside the ad hoc approach that we have done so far. But coming to specific issues, and there are a lot of thoughts I have, because now my perspective of looking at is probably 360. I have sat in an NGO, I've looked at from that perspective, looked at from the government perspective, and looked at from a startup perspective. And quickly what I will kind of share is, we looked at, for example, whole spectrum of this, and which are the areas where, for example, AI and tech can make a difference. So starting with seed, I'll begin with seed, like some of the problems you were talking. So seed is still a big problem. We have still a problem of spurious seeds, for example. Can we do seed traceability at scale? And again, government has been trying to come up with a blockchain-based seed traceability platform, where using a QR code, you can really get rid of this spurious seed problem. In our estimate, that alone will increase the yield by 15-20%. It's so bad, the quality input. That's one example. Then we go further down. Then we say as a farmer, which crop to grow that you're talking about. To me, it's like an optimization problem. If I also had a market intelligence cell, which gave me this information based on the supply demand, and by the way, some countries do an amazing job of finding where the supply and demand is, and you can predict, and you give me this advisory, which crop should I grow ahead of it, right? Can I look at that, right? So that's the second one I will talk about, right? And then once you have done that, can I, come up with advisory around, okay, farm monitoring? I know there are a lot of solutions. Maybe the government also does. But then when should I harvest? And then connect to the market. The connect their market is, okay, the day I harvest, they also have to make a decision which mandi to sell. Today, still the problem around real-time pricing and, optimizing that is next. Then the one that we talked about is most of the farmers are still not doing sorting, grading, which is like the basic processing, and they have not benefited from that.
So 50% of India's agri-tech startups are coming from Bangalore. Right. So what are you doing from a injection of agri-domain knowledge? How are you marrying them with people who understand the sector? What about agricultural universities? Sure. Where are they figuring in the whole scheme?
Yeah. So, and the good news is we have 6 agriculture universities, and a lot of the solutions but they have to vet.
They sit on the sidelines.
Correct. So that's where we're trying to say, through our innovation cell, we'll take a couple of ideas which we have selected, and I'll talk about 1 or 2 we are kind of trying to pilot, bring wherever the domain experts are needed, and then do a pilot in the field. For example, we are doing early pest detection, and this we took with Vadvani AI for the cotton ACE product that they have, which solves for a specific pest, which is a pink bollworm. So they have an app, they have been, and so that we are trying to mature.
So Vadvani was doing it, and I think that's a great example, right? In terms of, but how are you scaling that?
Yeah, so
the point is, I mean, the startups in the room here, for example, right? They're working with somebody, they've got some ideas.
So first we are doing a pilot in Dharwad. Right. If it works well, then we'll add it to our practices, POP, etc., guidelines saying this is a well-known tool and we recommend it. And through that mechanism, we'll have lakhs. We have 70 lakh farmers. Once a government says, okay, this is recommended, we have a large-scale opportunity for people to adopt that. So we'll increase the adoption of a proven technology through this mechanism. That's one. The other innovative stuff I do want to point out is soil health is a big issue. We have looked at a pilot where you increase soil health by increasing the carbon in it through organic or other practices, and you get a carbon credit for that. Again, this has been talked about, and we have done with one of the organic federations. They have tied up with a company for doing the organic practices. They get some extra cash, which again people are talking about. This is a new space. So that is the second one we have done. The one corollary there is this company also does through remote sensing NPK and soil, basic soil testing data. And I met the federation chief, and he said one of the reasons we did this tie-up was we did not have any other way to get this real-time soil health data. And we found this value add with this company who were doing the carbon credit provide was so much that we decided to onboard.
How would you help Bioprime to scale? As an example, as an example.
Yeah.
But,
so for us, climate change is big. In fact, we have been working on climate resilient agriculture policy and other stuff. So in fact, we took in, and I know Renuka from early on, is to see how some of those could be tested and validated by our universities to say, okay, they are safe to practice, and add it as part of POP, the package of practice. Once it becomes a package of practice, then all the agriculture officers in the district will propagate and say, okay, these are that way the farmer also has more trust that this is a validated, this is not a private sector who's trying to, who's untested in some sense, right? And so that would be a way by which you can...
Let me get a sense from the audience and see if there are any quick questions.
Can I add something?
Yeah, while just, I want to see if there are any hands. Can you raise your hands if there are? There's one here, can you get him a mic? And another one there. Sanjay, just allow me a second. Let me just ask the question. Sure. We'll come back to you.
Yes, my name is Bala. I'm in IT industry for last 16 years. Now I'm trying to get into agri. And I'm basically from an agriculture family. But my father and everyone, they are taking care of the agriculture now, but they are not ready to accept for any modern way of doing it. So I have bought myself a land where I want to do a trial of whatever it is going to be, piloting it more. If it succeeds, because in the software, whatever the business, we know that it takes longer term to get that right one. So they are going to laugh at me. I'm okay with that because they'll say that we have already told you that it is going to fail. This is not the way how it is going to be. I told them I'm not looking at taking money out of it for the next 5 years and things. I was going on. What I'm looking at is there isn't any kind of support what I can get it. I can be a pilot as a sandbox he was talking about. If there is like kind of my plot can be used, I'm not here, it's in Delta, Kaveri Delta and Tamil Nadu. So that area...
I think, your question is right. We'll come back to that. Let's look at structures, Ravi, right? Let's get that one question here as well. Let's look at, it's not about an individual startup. It's about how do we accelerate 100 of them, right?
So how significant is the importance of public policy, for the work that you do? And is the current policy framework conducive for the innovations that you are trying to bring in, or do you think any changes required?
So your question is Karnataka as an example, and it's true for other states
Not
as
necessarily
well.
Karnataka, but
I understand,
generally,
but Karnataka as an example, changing policies fast enough, keeping physical and real problems in consideration, right? That's if I were to translate your question. Okay, Sanjay, just go ahead and respond to what you're saying.
So one thing which my experience traveling from Kashmir to Kanyakumari and make it a point to visit a village, talk to the farmers. This whole structure of 67 universities, agriculture universities, and 700 KVKs is just broken. So if you want to scale anything which you guys are talking about, think of a structure which is beyond
We need new
the
structures.
67 universities and 7. They are just not able to reach the farmers. They don't interact with the farmers. Farmers don't even know where the KVKs are. So unless you really have a solution where there is a very tight coupling between the farmers and these agencies the government has created, you're not going to scale any of the startups which you have.
Renuka, do you use KVKs?
Can I add? No,
I'll
there is
come
some
to
more
that.
thing
Ravi,
called, no,
Ravi,
no, no,
Ravi,
no,
one
I
second.
have to,
One second,
this
one
one I have
second,
to
Ravi,
say.
one second,
No,
one
no, there
second,
is
one second.
RSK, okay, which I didn't mention. So there are the Rayata
Ravi,
Super
Ravi,
Kendra.
Ravi, one second, one second, one second. Renuka, do you use KVKs?
On this, I would have to agree with Sanjay that KVKs are not much of a help. In fact, I was in Delhi for the Agri Conclave, Startup Conclave, and the framework of the scientists and research institutes is so stuck in a box that they cannot even visualize beyond what is. So for technologies like us, their response is, this cannot be possible. There's nothing beyond what is already put into the FCO that works. And while we've been, like literally selling to the farmers on the field, and we know that it works. So no, I don't think for new technologies this structure works. I think somewhere where you can directly interact with farmers, whether it is through agri challenges. I just take a second here. I think agri challenges that give you an implementation opportunity on the field are fantastic. We've benefited hugely from them, and I would encourage all of you to start up. So that is answering probably that gentleman's question as well, that how do we get into validations. So these agri challenges provide you connects with actual farmers on the field and get implementations done, which is something that would give you credibility.
See, his question is about trust. His question is that the farmer doesn't trust.
Yeah, the
In
farmer
this case, if
doesn't
a father doesn't trust his son as well, that amplifies the
But-
problem.
Father doesn't trust the son. Farmers doesn't trust the technology. They don't trust anything.
Exactly.
See, currently
Exactly.
they don't
100%.
trust anything.
It's not about your personal
And-
relationship, but it's
And
about...
I think that is largely because in this ecosystem for hundreds of years, farmers have been sold water, farmers have been sold soil in terms
Yeah, I
of
won't
chemicals.
relate
So demonstration and seeing is believing
Yeah.
is the only approach where you scale. I'm sorry, but it cannot work. You have to show the validation on 10 farms, then you have to show it on 100 farms, then you have to show it on 1,000 farms, and that's the only way to scale.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Can I have go one more thing?
No, can
minutes.
Ravi respond?
Yeah,
Please,
so
please.
what I want to say was, so KVK is at a district level. Now we are getting into the nuances.
Can you also answer his question?
Yeah, I
on
will
policy?
answer your question. There is something called a RSK, Rayata Sampark Kendra in Karnataka, which are 740 of them. So there is a difference. Again, now we have to get into the nuance. Same Rayata Bharosa Kendra in Telangana. So those are probably the right, maybe have not worked at level, that requires more state level, right? But that is our model from a department to go.
Is that working?
Yes, that's how we distribute all these seeds. All of this is crores of subsidy, crores of stuff is happening. Now, can it be better? Absolutely. I can myself tell you 10 problems. But today, whatever the farmer in terms of seed, fertilizer, all of the distribution happens through RSK. KVK is a different. I'm just saying, I'm not saying your point is not valid. I just wanted to bring that up.
That's right. That's right. Ravi, respond to his question about
and
trust.
to your question, see, my suggestion is first is this like a dysentery. Are you rain fed? Are you in a drip? If you are in drip, if you are in an irrigated territory, I can tell you very quickly certain crops, horticulture, depending on the type of soil, you can pick up and you can do a profiling and you can easily pick up, these are the 3, 4, if I did this much I'll make. I mean, it's a math or science there. We can discuss it offline maybe, and I can tell you in my opinion what could work. Yeah, you have some
Can I just add something on it?
Yeah.
It's going to take only 1 minute.
Sure.
See, what I see is there can be hundreds of policy. There can be hundreds of actions from the government.
Right.
Unless the fundamental of the people who are going to do it, if that doesn't change, nothing is going to be possible.
Sure.
And the important thing is 15 years back, in the software industry, if we say India is going to be a product country, how many of you would have believed? So something has come up in the last 15 years as India is becoming a product and a SaaS product. So that's something has to happen, and it has to happen at every district level, every panchayat level if possible. Then only you can look at it the drastic change.
Yeah, no, we welcome people like you and who do more scientific approach, because agriculture is complex.
10 seconds
and
on
on the
policy
policy question, so far there have been no major hindrances we have seen. But if you were to say, can we make policy around startups participating? Again, there was a amendment to KPTCL so that smaller startups can participate in tenders. So there are more nuances. Can there be more done? Absolutely, right? I mean, there is space around maybe agri credit. We are looking at that. How do you make non-civil score based? You know, again, that's maybe falls under the umbrella of credit, increasing credit access. But so far, there is nothing fundamental. Of course, I don't want to talk about the farm laws and get into a separate debate.
No, that's fine.
But, you know, otherwise, so far, I have not found it to be inadequate for what we are doing.
Yeah. So we have unfortunately run out of time, but we haven't run out of set of issues to debate on and talk about. Agriculture is a wonderfully complex area where you can dissect the issues not just at a macro level, but whether it's a small farmer or a large farmer, whether it's an irrigated piece of land or a non-irrigated piece of land, what crop is the person growing, which agroclimatic zone is the person falling into, and India has so many of them, etc. So, but the problems again are best focused on the ground, are best focused with a combination of agri and technology. We desperately need more technology in agri, but technology by itself is not sufficient. You need policy, you need agricultural domain knowledge, you need working on the ground. I'm sorry if we couldn't take any more questions. I know there were a few other hands that wanted to ask. But thank you so much, Renuka, Sanjay, and Ravi, for a wonderful discussion.
Thank you.